Hello, today is October 30th, 2018. I'm sitting today with Mr. Weldon Vorpahl at his daughter's home in Windsor, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Welcome, Don, as you prefer to go by. Thanks for sitting down today to tell your story.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Very good. Well, let's start out if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you're born, a little bit about your family.
Okay. I was born in the little town of Vernia, Texas, which is about 20 miles south and east of San Antonio. I was born April 2nd, 1922. As a child, I watched those. Randolph Field used to be, well, before World War II, the Air Corps, the flying part was part of the Army. It was known as U.S. Army Air Corps. It was only after the war that it became Air Force. But anyway, I lived about 10 miles from Randolph Field. Primary was on one side, huge base Randolph Field. Primary was on one side, basic on the other, and then on the other side of San Antonio was advanced. That's where they got their commissions. All the training was right there in that San Antonio area. And as a kid, I was get on my bike, and around Livonia there were about 3 fields that they bring these pilots over and make strange field landings, and they'd take off. I'm on my bicycle following them around.
Oh, wow.
And fortunately, one was on one side of this road, and they'd get up, they'd land there, make a couple circles, go right across the street, land over there, make a couple circles, and go on the other side of town. There was a third field. I was over there. I'm on my bicycle all the time. I'm really, really interested in flying, And when I grew up, I wanted to be an airline pilot because airlines were very new at that time.
Yeah.
Very few. American, Eastern, I guess. Maybe Braniff, Continental, but not much more. And a lot of big cities, a lot of cities really didn't have air transportation, available. So I wanted to be an airline pilot. So I was in my 3rd year of college in 1942 when the war broke out. December 7th, 41.
Do you remember where you were and what you were thinking when you heard about it?
Yes, I was in college at Texas A&I College of, well, it was Texas A&I, Texas College of Arts and Industries, known at that time, but now it's become Texas A&M Kingsville. I was in my 3rd year of natural gas engineering studying. I wanted to be a natural gas engineer. Well, war broke out. Everybody was quitting school. They didn't finish the term.
Yeah.
I finished the term. I don't know why. I should have, I didn't finish my classes. So anyway, I enlisted at Randolph Field on the 28th of January of 1942, and was sent home for 30 days to wait for assignment. And it finally came, and was sent to Kelly Field in San Antonio for orientation. I guess it was about 6 weeks or something like that. And then I was sent to Hicks Field in Fort Worth, Texas for primary flight training. Unfortunately for me, I didn't make it as a pilot, and I was brokenhearted. Oh man, was I brokenhearted. But anyway, then they sent us down to Ellington Field in Houston, and while I was there, I'd become friends with this guy from New York, and he said, "You know what? You show me Texas, and I'll show you New York." Huh, you think this country boy didn't jump at that? Had never been more than 50 miles from home,
Sure.
And so I took him down to South Texas and the old King Ranch. I don't know what the King Ranch is now, but at that time, King Ranch covered most of South Texas. They had their own schools, stores, everything, and took him there and down to the Rio Grande Valley where the orchards are, and well, it's very a lot of grapefruit and oranges and stuff like that's growing down there. Came back up to San Antonio, or La Vernia, my home. We took off for New York, and his home was in Tuckahoe, New York. And I'll never forget, we stopped in Columbus, Ohio one night for dinner on the way up there. He had a car, and we were driving. Gas was available. And
were you on leave, or how did
oh, yes.
Okay.
I'm in the service.
Yeah.
I'm in the service, and we're just waiting for time,
Okay.
So we stopped in Columbus for dinner, and came time to pay the check, and it's already been paid for. I said, what? In those days, if you were in uniform, you were a hero, instant hero. So anyway, from there we went on up to Tuckahoe, and what an experience it was for me, because I got to see when you went to New York, you were instant heroes. I mean, everybody was, if you were a uniform, it was fantastic. I got to see I got to see an all-star baseball game between the American League and the National League at the old Polo Grounds, which are no longer there anymore. We saw at that time Fred Waring and his Pennsylvanians was an orchestra sponsored by Chesterfield Cigarettes, and they came on every afternoon for 15 minutes. We got to see a broadcast of them, and he had that chorus also, very good. And then we saw the Rockettes. I mean, it was sensational stuff. And got to go to the old Stark Club, and what another one, I can't think of the name of it, 52 or something like that. Well known at the time, probably not existing anymore, but had a wonderful time. And one night we'd been celebrating, and we got on the subway and rode. The guy said, well, this is the end of the line, guys. It's time to get off. They said, well, where are we? We're in Brooklyn. Brooklyn? We don't want to go to Brooklyn. We want to go to Tuckahoe, New York. So we had to go all the way back to New York City and caught another train up to Tuckahoe to where he lived. And what a beautiful home up there, nice area. I don't know, but I think his father was probably an investment banker, because when we came back, he had been my friend David Wilmot that I was traveling with. We stopped at in Pennsylvania at the Wharton School of Finance, and he was a student there, and we went into this, I guess it was a frat house or something, I don't know. Anyway, we went up to the front door, and the guy lit a little bitty hole like that, and saw who it was, or he welcomed him, and then we went in and had a great time.
Wow.
And then we traveled on home, and finally got called back into service. I was sent to Davis Mountain Field in Tucson, just outside Tucson, and that's where they formed a formation cruise.
Now, from pilot school, then what did you transfer to?
Well, I was going to navigation school.
Navigation. Okay.
So I didn't. I'd forgotten that interval in time. I'd been to navigation school for 13 weeks and had gotten my commission and my wings as a navigator. And so I was sent to Davis Mountain Field in Tucson, where it became a crew. Had the pilots, co-pilots, and the bombardiers had just gotten out of bomb training. Navigators had just gotten out of their navigation training. The radio operators had gotten out of theirs, and the engineers had gotten out of theirs, plus the 6 gunners. That made up the crew: pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, engineer, radio operator, 4 gunners.
On the 17 or the 24?
On a B-24.
B-24? Okay.
Always on B-24s. And I guess we were sent up to Muroc, California, out in the desert. And we got transferred down to March Field at one time in outside of Riverside, California. then back to then back to Muroc, and then back up to Pocatello, Idaho. It was at Pocatello that we were just about ready to go overseas, and we'd had a weekend pass and came back, went out to the flight line stupidly. That's the way the Army operated. Right off of a pass, you come back and go on a flight. And this was one of the last flights we were to make because it was a formation bombing flight, you know. I don't know remember how many planes were in it, but we were about 13,000 feet, and I'm sitting up on the flight deck reading magazines, and I see the co-pilot suddenly getting in a panic situation. I look up at the 4-engine plane, all duplicate sets of instruments on this side for the co-pilot, over here for the pilot. Fuel pressure gauge, 0. I looked out the wing, on fire. Oh my gosh. I think this thing is going to blow up at any minute. My parachute's up front. So I go, get off the flight deck, go outside beside the the front wheel, put on my parachute, come back, and they say, get out, get out, get out. I jumped out, it was about 13,000 feet.
Oh, man.
And I didn't have time to think about it. It was just get out. I knew that plane was going to blow up at any minute, but it didn't. And I got out, and the 6 enlisted men got out, but the pilot, the co-pilot, and the bombardier stayed with the plane. The pilot was trying to save it, of course, make sure that we got out. But as we were coming down the parachute, I saw the plane slowly going to. It lost its lift on the right side, you know. Went in a slow turn like that. Oh, what an awesome sight that was, you know. And I didn't know if anybody was in it or not at that time. I hadn't counted the parachutes, but I could see the parachutes coming down, but I didn't count them to see how many there were. I didn't know how many there were. So anyway, we get out of that situation, get picked up, taken to the hospital. Spent a couple of days in the hospital, and
were you injured in the fall? Or?
Not seriously.
Okay.
I apparently was wearing a flight suit, and I had a pencil in my pocket. And when I met up with one of the guys on the ground, he said, "What's that in your chin?" Well, apparently a lead pencil I had in my pocket when I hit the ground, it broke it, and the lead was somewhere in my chin. I don't know. But anyway, that was the only, other than that, no injuries at all. And oddly enough, we had never had any training as if in an emergency situation, you know. We were just lucky. I don't know. It was just, maybe you didn't need it. I mean, what do? You get out, you pull a ripcord, you land, and that's it, you know, and hopefully you don't get hurt. Well, anyway, after I get sent home for 30 days, come back, get on another crew, and when I was at Davis-Monthan, we had gotten all these shots, tetanus, yellow fever, typhoid, I don't remember what all they were, but a whole bunch of them. Both arms were sore, I remember that. And but anyway, I get on another crew, and oddly enough, we're getting ready to go overseas again. I'm in the hospital. I was in the hospital 3 times during the service with this, what they called then jaundice. I don't know what it is. I think it's hepatitis now, but anyway, jaundice. Anyway, anybody that needed overwater training was a navigator. Well, on this particular flight, they took a different navigator, and the mission was to go out straight over Crater Lake in Oregon, go out 100 miles, parallel the coast, come into Hamilton Field in San Francisco, hit the Farallon Islands out there, and come in over the Golden Gate Bridge in Hamilton Field in I don't remember what it is, a town just on the northern side of the Golden Gate Bridge, and we were supposed to land there. Well, I'm in the hospital. This plane leaves. They give a position report when they left the coast of Oregon. Everything's fine. I never hear from them again. So I don't know what happened. I don't. Maybe they just didn't tell me, but I never found out what happened. I just had to assume that they were above the clouds, and maybe the navigator wanted to get a drift reading off the waves, the whitecaps, and they just went into the water, went into the ocean. I assume that. I don't know what happened. No one ever told me.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Air Corps ever found out. But anyway, I spent that when I got out of the hospital. They said, Vorpahl, you know what? You cost us 2 airplanes. We're going to make an instructor out of you. So I became an instructor navigator with the 382nd Bomb Group. That was a group I was with all during my service. And well, all I did was ride on these check flights with these, when they went on cross-country trips. I went along and gave them any instructions that I thought they needed, or corrected them any kind of way, or gave any information that I knew might help them in their navigation, But anyway, it's coming to the end of the war, and finally they're deciding that these people are coming back. We were in Gowan Field in Idaho at this time, and these crews are coming back from the South Pacific, New Guinea, Australia, and so they're going to make them instructors, and all this static personnel, as we were known, they made crews out of us. So I became part of an elite crew. Real good pilots, good co-pilots, good bombardiers, good engineers, good radio operators, good gunners, everything, We had an elite crew.
Yeah.
And don't you know, the war ended before we could get overseas, and I'm probably the only guy that ever was in the Air Force or Air Corps or Army that was disappointed the war ended. I hate to
Yeah, fair enough.
That doesn't sound right,
Yeah.
but I was so eager to get in the beginning of the war, and then when I didn't get to serve my country overseas during the war, I was really, really disappointed. But that was fate, and people often ask me when I say, when they ask me, what theater did you serve in? I never did go overseas. It wasn't that I knew any senator or governor or anybody of any influence. It was just fate.
Yeah.
That's the way things happen.
That's right.
And I wanted to be a active participant, but as it turned out, I really didn't get to be. But I guess hopefully I gave somebody a little experience that they.
That's what I was going to say. Hopefully, over the years, you've realized that you did very much play a part in the war, and all these people that you taught.
Yeah. Hopefully nobody got lost. I don't think they did. No. But anyway, that was my war service. And when the war was over, as I was going through the discharge line, the doctor looked at me and he said, "What's wrong in your eyes, son?" I said, "Nothing." Step over there. Well, my eyes, with this jaundice that I'd had from that allegedly bad serum, I was in that sick condition again. So instead of being discharged at that time, they sent me up to Fort George Wright in Washington, outside, I think it's Spokane. And for 6 weeks, I was put on a low-fat diet. I learned to drink black coffee, no cream, no butter on your potatoes, no fat on your steaks. Man, I ate good, but no fat, period. And after 6 weeks, there was in that day they called it icteric index. I had this high icteric index, and I was discharged from the service with a 35% disability. Really? They couldn't bring it down. And so I got back out, got my, got out of service.
So, sorry to interrupt you. So everything can be traced back to the bad
Yeah.
serum of the shots when you.
We think so.
Wow.
We think so.
Wow.
We think so. And faith
Yeah.
after that, you know.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And people are astounded that I served 4 years in the service and had to get overseas.
Yeah.
It
yeah.
wasn't my.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
I didn't know anybody.
Yeah. Well,
It was just fate, the way things happened.
coupled with the fact that you must have been a very good navigator too, as well.
I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, after the war, then I went back to school. I went back to, I married this girl, Jennifer's mother.
Well, we got to tell that story. How you tell
Okay.
how you two met and
Okay,
how you
well-
wooed her and everything.
Well, I had met Barbara as a during the war. They had, when I was in Muroc, which is about, I don't know, 60, 70, 80, 90 miles to the east of Los Angeles, out there in the desert. Well, they had Barbara apparently belonged to a group of some kind of group, but a bunch of girls, and they would go to different bases on a weekend and dance with the, well, in my case, it was at the Officers Club, and that's where I met her, and we fell in love, and so we married during the war, and I'm up in Idaho, but she's down living with her parents in California, and after the war, then I rejoined her and in Alameda, California, and went back to school at the University of California in Berkeley, which was just literally up the road, you know. And I graduated from Cal in 1950. Yeah, I got out of service in 46, January of 46, and graduated in 1950 from Cal, and then worked in San Francisco for a year.
Yeah, did you continue with your engineering degree then?
No.
No.
I had, before the war, I was studying natural gas engineering. I got back after the war and I looked at those books and I said, man, I'm completely lost. But then I decided, well, initially I wanted to be an optometrist.
Oh.
For whatever reason, I don't know. Somewhere along the line, I thought I'd like to be an optometrist. Well, I looked at some of those books and I said, you know what? This isn't for me. Yeah. So I got my BS in business administration. It's not as glorious a thing as a optometrist, but it was you learn theory of price and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Advertising.
Yeah.
It was a good education.
Yeah. Did you take advantage of the GI Bill?
Yes, sir. I did. Yes, sir. I worked part time in different places. I remember working at the H.C. Capwell, I think, was a department store, and everything. I worked there. My best job was somewhere in the canneries of Cal Packing Corporation.
Really?
You know, Del Monte people. Good company, paid good, and I was. They'd bring these loads of green peaches in, apricots or whatever, and they mix them in this vat. Put them in a jar, and this vat had a bunch of sugar in it. They fill the glass jar, put the lid on, and rolled into this thing they call a retard. It's about, I don't know, 20, 30 feet long. And it was my job to bring the water up to a boiling point or whatever. I don't remember what degree it was, but slowly bring it up, because if you didn't, you blew the caps off of all these things. That was a lot of money, you know.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I had that job. That was a good paying job, and that would sort of help me during the lean times, you know, when I was getting $90 a month and from the GI Bill. But then I worked after I got my degree, I worked in San Francisco for a year, And we went down to Las Vegas just on a trip, on vacation. And Barbara she was very allergic to the mold in that area, dampness and all that. And she couldn't wear a short sleeve shirt. And she'd go like this. She couldn't wear a short sleeve shirt. And she stepped off the plane, she could breathe. It was a new world.
Wow.
My career in San Francisco was over right there.
Yeah.
Yep, and so we went back up there and worked a couple of months, and then went back. I went back down to Vegas and got a job, and then brought a family, brought them all down in January of '52, and we stayed there. I had various jobs. Once had my own real estate office for a number of months, or a number of years actually. And I used to do the VA thing. When the VA got a house back as a repossession, it was my job to go out and look at the house and make recommendations. It needs painting, a soffit, it needs a new sink, it needs this, that. Send it into the VA. They automatically just okayed it, sent it back. Then we gave it to 4 different contractors, and they bid on it. Then we'd send a bid back to the VA, and they chose, and then we'd give them the contract, when we got back. So, well, everything was going fine. I was getting a good salary for just thing, and I was working in the office. If I found a buyer, I could make my commission as a salesman. But I was getting a good, at that time it was $800 a month. That was pretty good. And anyway, one day I get a call from the grand jury. They say, "We want to talk to you." "What do you want to talk to me about?" Well, anyway, I went down there. What had happened, these properties would come in, and the broker had to go out and change the locks so that we had the key. I had a key, and the contractors had the keys. Anyway, the girl that did the typing said, "Have you seen that house down there on Del Mar?" I said, "No, I haven't seen it, but I'll take a look at it." She said, "We'd like to live in that area. Take a look at it." So I went down there, looked at it, and the lady comes over, and when I'm in there, she says, "I've got someone who wants to buy that house if they can have the refrigerator." I said, "There's no refrigerator there." Well, I do my duty. I go back, I make out my report to the VA, and I tell them, allegedly there was a refrigerator there, but the lady next door says she has a buyer that knows that there was a refrigerator left there when these people left. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, one day I get this call from the grand jury. They want to talk to me. I go down and tell them the story. Unbeknownst to me, they had called a broker down there too. I was back in the office and at my desk and doing something. "What the heck do you mean going to the grand jury with that story?" I said, "Wait a minute. I'm just telling the truth. It's the government. I'm just telling the truth." Well, what happened, what I assume happened, he and his friend, one of the contractors, took the refrigerator out. Instead of washing it out there on the site, they take it back to his yard to wash it out. A likely story. I don't think so. Anyway, I didn't know. Anyway, he says, well, he's mad, because he's been caught.
Yeah.
And anyway, he said, "Well, we've been thinking about making some changes anyway. Bob's going to take over your job." I said, "Okay." He said, "You can stay here as a salesman, but Bob will be doing VA work." Oh, okay. By coincidence, I get a call from a guy that I'd known they were just building Caesar's Palace. I'd known him years before, and he says, "Come out and I want to talk to you." I'll go out there. He says, "I want you to be a shift manager on the slot machines." I said, "What? I don't know anything about machines." "You don't have to know anybody. I know you're honest." So anyway, I take the job, and got to be pretty doggone good. The pay was good, food was good. I ate in the coffee shop, had the insurance. Then after I'm there a while, I got to know the guy in the light booth, and I got to see all the shows that come in from the light booth. Best house, best seat in the house. So anyway, enjoyed that, and I worked. That started me off my career in the gaming business. That's pretty good. It was, it was 8 hours. You're on your feet. Mm-hmm. You supervise the booth cashiers and the girls on the floor, or your booth the girls making change for the people as you go around. That in those days they still had coin machines, Mm-hmm. Now it's all paper or coupons or whatever. So anyway, that started me in the gaming industry, and once I got in it and the pay was pretty good, I said, "You know what, this isn't bad." And then I got to learn. I got to playing golf, and I had a buddy that was a bartender there at and on Caesar and Cleopatra's Barge. We got to playing golf together. I got to where I being on the graveyard shift all the time. Nobody else wanted it. I wanted it because I'd put in my 8 hours, go home, change clothes, get a bite to eat, go out to the golf course, play 18 holes. How good can it get? I loved it, So it worked out good for me, and I enjoyed it. And so I spent about 23 years then in the gaming industry. But I had a real estate business on the side too. So. But anyway, that's the way it was. And then after I retired, I worked in like I think I told you, I opened Caesar's Palace with this friend of mine. I was there from '66 to '73. And then they were just opening the old MGM where they had the fire later on. They opened it in '73. I worked there from '73 till '80 at the time of the fire. And when I got back, oddly enough, I went on vacation the day of the fire. And I got back, and I'll never forget it. Didn't like anyway. Said, "You don't have a job." Oh man, I'm devastated. Well, anyway, I called my friend out of Tropicana, and he said, "Sure, come on down here. We're ready for you." So I worked there from '80 to '89, and when I retired. So that was a career, And so
before off camera, we talked about Vegas. You've seen a lot of change in Vegas. So what was the population when you first moved out there?
About 25,000.
Boy.
And now it's over 2 million.
Wow.
And oddly enough, the town went crazy over the ice hockey last year. The National Hockey League, ice hockey.
Yeah.
I've never seen a hockey game, and I still haven't seen a hockey game. But the guy that has the franchise, I guess one of the conditions of their moving to Vegas was that he sell every season, every ticket for every game before they gave him the franchise. Which is okay. But the town, everywhere you go, you see hockey.
Ice hockey in the desert.
Yeah, it doesn't figure, But the thing is, there's so many people that are transfers into Vegas from the East Coast and retired people, like all of that Summerlin area out there. That's beautiful area, new town literally, and they've all moved out there and they're used to hockey, whereas the old timers like myself have never seen a hockey game.
Right. Yeah.
But then now, next year, they've got the Raiders coming in from Oakland. And before I came up here, we drove by the building that's going to be monstrous. Oh, it's building a huge stadium. I don't know how many people it's going to hold, 60, 70,000. And I guess it'll be a success because people will be able to come in on a weekend, go to the game, see a show, or do some gambling and do this or that.
Right.
You know, oddly enough, people come to Vegas not to gamble, but there's other attractions. One time when Jennifer came down there, she and her son, my grandson, were down there. We took a helicopter trip up the Colorado River. Very interesting. Other people like
Thank you.
places like Red Rock Canyon, Death Valley, Hoover Dam. People have different, and they don't even think about gambling.
Yeah.
Yet most people think that people come there to gamble. Not necessarily so. Yeah. But there's so much to see that's interesting, you know. And like the doctor that I went to when I was up here last year, she came down there, and I don't think they did any gambling, but they went out, they wanted to see Red Rock Canyon. And it is beautiful. But they don't necessarily have to come to Vegas to do gambling. But there's enough other things for them to see that they got the big racetrack there. You know, they have a couple of races there every year that are huge successes. They have a Daisy Carnival, whatever that is. It's a crazy thing with people, drug users, you know. They have their meetings are all night, you know, and they sleep all day and go out and party all night.
Well, let me back up and go and
Yes,
get back to go back to your youth, and there's some questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
And Jennifer, yeah, we'll get those too.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted, you know, I know this is the sextant that he used. I wanted you to pick it up and see how heavy it is.
Okay.
Just so that when you figure how heavy the pack had to be, all of the things that he had to carry to get himself just to his work desk.
Right.
You know,
Pretty cool. Okay, I'm gonna get back out of the way.
Yeah. Come jump back in here in a bit.
you know, when I was fitted for the parachute, in the beginning, well, we each had our individual parachute. Later on, you just went to the parachute shop and got a parachute.
Okay.
Early during the war, you were assigned a parachute, and that was yours. Anyway, I was fitted with this heavy flying jacket, flying suit, fleece-lined pants, coveralls, big coat, heavy boots, and then yet in this accident I was telling you about, and when I had to jump out of the plane, it was in the summertime. I had a summer flying jacket. It was a light jacket, and anyway, one of the things when I landed, I could on the way down I could tell I was bleeding from the nose. What had happened? I'd been fitted with this heavy jacket, and here I am with a light jacket on, and the strap that comes around the front of you, like,
Oh boy.
picked my nose, and I was bleeding, and I didn't know it. It didn't hurt me, but it was an odd situation that I was fitted with in a winter thing, and here I am in the summertime with a parachute, you know.
Well, for those that don't know, I mean, your plane wasn't pressurized. It was, and it had open windows, so it could get very cold in there.
Very cold, very cold. Yep, and they allegedly had heaters, but they didn't work.
Yeah.
Didn't work. So it was very cold. You get up to 20,000 feet, it's getting real cold.
Right.
And I can remember times, especially at night, I could barely hold it. My hand was like that, and I tried to write with it, you know, and it was pretty bad, but we survived, you know.
Wow.
But I guess that's the way it.
I'm going to back all the way up to youth and ask questions along the way.
Okay.
What did your father do as a career or as a business?
Okay, he had we had a little town of Vernia, about 500 people. He had a store, country store. And we had National Grocers as a main item, but we sold dry goods, we sold farming equipment, we sold kitchen equipment, everything. You got to remember, not everybody had cars back in the early 30s. And this was when he opened a store in 32, I mean, it was pretty primitive.
Well, that on top of that, you were just coming off or in the thick of the Great Depression as well,
Right.
correct? Yeah. And how did that play in with business, and how did you guys make it through that period of
Well,
time?
it was very difficult. It was I can remember people across the road. I went up there, and I don't know why. I was too young. I was 10 years old at the time. I guess 9, 10, 11. But I remember they must have been 15 or 20 cattle that they just killed. They shot them and left them there. And I don't know what happened to the meat, whatever, but there was no market. People had no money. You know, it was tough times. Wow. And they just, very few people had automobiles. And I can remember the country store that we had. People would come in with, they raised cotton in those days. They'd bring in a wagon load of cotton. There was a gin. They'd bale it, and they'd come into town. And my dad had a policy of, he said, I'll let you have credit all year, but when you fill that first bale of cotton, I want to get paid. And it worked. But the people were honest in those days, you know? They honored that commitment. And he was very successful at it. And I can remember times when, especially on weekends, 5 or 6 big wagons and the horses in the back of the store there. And, you know, it was primitive times.
Wow.
And
Now, did the Dirty 30s and the dust storms make it that far down? And were you affected by that at all? The dust storms from the?
No.
Okay.
No, we didn't get that. No,
Okay.
We were
That's
that
further
far,
north?
That was up in Oklahoma and Kansas mainly. And
Okay.
so we didn't experience that as much as they did up there.
Oh, good.
No, the times were difficult, but as far as the dust was concerned, we were pretty much spared that.
Good.
A little bit, but not very much.
Yeah.
But this is just like nowadays when they have fires over in California, we get smoke over in Nevada from those fires. It just comes over, you know.
Yeah.
But as far as the sandstorm, no, we weren't really that affected in our part. Now, remember, we're pretty far down south,
Yeah,
in
okay.
South Texas, you know, way down there.
Yeah.
And
And talk, I'm interested about this little boy riding his bike around these airfields. That must have just been fascinating for a kid to watching this. And,
well, it was, you know, and like I say, Randolph Field was known as the West Point of the air in those days.
Wow.
Because it was huge. I don't know how many acres it comprises, but on one side they got the new pilots and gave them a certain amount of training, and then they advanced over to the other side for the basic training, which was a little better. And then if they passed that, then they were shipped over to the other side of San Antonio, Kelly Field, where they had the advanced training. And that's where they got the favorite plane in those days was the AT-6 Texan.
right.
And it's still, I think they're still going. I don't know.
One just crashed here last week in L.A. Yeah.
Really?
On the highway. Yeah, he tried to land it on the highway.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good plane. It was a very good plane. Yeah, and but we were. I was so fascinated with that flying that I just wanted to become a pilot.
Oh, fair enough. Now, did you get a chance during that time to go up in the air with a barnstormer or something, or was it the military the first time you got in an airplane?
Well, the first time I ever flew was in an old Ford trimotor, and it was visiting different cities
Uh-huh.
and on weekends, and they'd give you rides for, I don't know, probably 50 cents or a dollar or something like that. But that was my first experience in the air. But I was so fascinated with the flying, seeing these planes from Randolph Field come over practically every day, and that I just wanted to be a pilot.
Wow, wow.
And but unfortunately, I didn't make it as a pilot. But they said we can make pilots out of you, but we don't have time. This is
Right.
the beginning of the war.
Yeah.
So we need pilots now, and if you don't have the skills, we don't have the time to spend with you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we can make pilots out of you if we had time, but we don't have time. So,
Yeah.
but then I guess then they needed navigators and bombardiers also. So
Now, did you, after you didn't make it through the pilots program, did they offer you these different, or
No.
or did they just say, you're becoming a navigator?
that was it. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I kind of think that they looked at me, looked at my record, and I'd been in college. Navigation is a little bit difficult for some people.
Sure,
you know?
yeah.
And there's a lot of tables to look at and compare and look at, and it's so. I kind of feel that maybe the fact that I had been in college put me into navigation school as opposed to bombardier school or something like that. And I don't mean to demean.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Well,
Yeah.
but that's just the
Yeah.
way it was.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it? Did you take to it?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
loved it. Yeah, and it was. I got that training at a little airfield, 50 miles west of San Antonio, little town of Hondo, Texas, Hondo, Texas, and we got the training there, and it was great. I loved it, and I was especially lucky because if I had a weekend off, I could go home.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Not many people had that opportunity, but I did, and I've just been so lucky, fortunate in so many ways.
Oh, boy, yeah.
All during my life that I'm not sure that I deserve it, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being there in Texas, and you talked earlier about your buddy from New York, did you guys keep in touch, or did you lose?
No, he was, during the war, he apparently was shot down over Germany, and I never did hear from him.
Wow.
His mother wrote my mother a letter asking if there might be some connection, but there was none, and he'd gone his way and been in a different outfit than I was. And we just lost.
Right.
So no, I didn't. I had no contact with him at all after we left.
So he was lost over in Germany then?
Yes.
Oh boy. Wow.
Yeah, somewhere I don't know
Yeah.
what the circumstances were, but that's the way it was. You
Yeah,
know, and
yeah.
it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I was, again, I don't understand why I was so lucky all the way, all along the line, you
Yeah.
know, and even after the war with two beautiful children, and it's just, I don't know, it's just,
Well,
God has been good to me.
Yeah.
He's
Very
been
good.
especially good to me.
How was it? Let me ask you on both ends.
Okay.
How was it going from a civilian into military life? How was that transition, and then vice versa, military back to civilian life? Did you have much of adjustment in either
No,
case?
not at all. No,
Yeah.
it was easy. It was relatively easy on each end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very easy on each end. I had no problem at all. It just seemed, well, from the beginning, I'd been more or less indoctrinated with this military. San Antonio's always been a big military town, you know.
Okay.
Fort Sam Houston has always been there. Kelly Field has always been there. Randolph Field has always been there. So it's always been a big military town. So seeing the military wasn't anything new to me. And
Yeah. Okay.
we used to go into San Antonio and see these guys. And in those days they called the private dog faces, you know.
Yeah.
And $21 a month. That's what the salary was. That's what they got. And that's what they call them, dog faces, you know. Well, that was the way it was. No, there was no problem on transition on either end.
Did you have any thought on the back end of making it a career, or?
Very little.
Okay.
And the reason being that Loran and what is it? All this fancy navigation stuff were just coming into being, and I said, you know, the day of the navigator is going to be out. And the other thing was that when I was at Muroc, the commanding officer was a 32-year-old West Point graduate, and I said, you know, I think I see the light. The commanding officers in all the different places are going to be graduates of one of the academies, you know, be it military academy, naval academy, Coast Guard, whatever. So all those things kind of factored in, and I said, I don't think it's the right thing to stay. I must admit there's times I wished I had stayed in, but all this fancy navigation stuff was coming into being, and I just figured the day of the navigator was going to be pretty much gone. And I don't know if they still have a navigation school or if it's just part of pilot training, because now it's all GPS, easy stuff like that, and I don't know if they get any training with Celestial, and what was a big deal in our day, you know.
Right.
I mean, night flying, how are you going to, out over the Pacific, there's no sign down there saying this is Mulberry Street or whatever, you know, and you better know how to find out where you are, and you better know those stars in that constellation, you know. And we, in navigation, school, we had to learn 50 constellations and the stars they're in, you know.
That's what I enjoy about interviewing your generation, just everything you've seen in your lifetime. You know, we talked a little bit about how much Vegas had changed, but just in technology and everything you've seen in your lifetime. You know, you talked about the horses behind your dad's store, and now we've been to the moon. And you know.
And you know, in the early days, now, when I was in first grade, the kids rode donkeys and horses to school. You know, living out in the country, there was no thing as a school bus. If you got to school, you got on a horse, you know, or a donkey.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, and well, and I don't know if this worked out or not, but when I was, I guess it was in about the second grade, they built a new high school. They had an old high school that was just old, decrepit, two-story building, but they built a new high school out of brick, and man, it was beautiful, big, beautiful auditorium. But every morning, the grade school, like first grade would be in the first group, second grade in the second group, third grade. Everybody was marched into the auditorium, and they sang songs. Beautiful Texas, of course, was primary. I mean, that was hammered into you from the day you were born. You know? But you sang different songs, and I mean, I can remember one was Old Black Joe, which you wouldn't even think about today's, you know. But you thought in those days it was just considered a song to be sung. And but I don't know if it was to wake you up or, you know, get you started for the day, or but it worked. And then after 15, 20, 30 minutes, how long it was in there, we'd go back to our individual classrooms and resume our, you know, do our daily work. But it was very interesting, you know. Just think how these kids getting out of school nowadays at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, have all that afternoon. You know, we used to, I guess one of the big things that was different for even though we're only 20 some odd miles from San Antonio, that was a big trip, you know. that was a big trip for us to go to San Antonio. And I remember the big thing for me was there was a Woolworth store at the corner of Alamo Plaza and Houston Street. That there was a Woolworth there, and they had a lunch counter.
Uh-huh.
And the treat of my life in those days was to have a ham sandwich. Oh man, that was good. Oh man, that was good.
Wow.
That was good.
Wow. Wow.
That was, but you know, now what do? You
Yeah.
drive up to McDonald's, you get a sausage and egg, whatever. You know. But it was a big day, big deal for me and for us in those days to go to San Antonio and eat at a restaurant. You know, I never ate at a restaurant in a little old town that I was in. I think there was a restaurant there, but I never did eat there.
Wow. That's what amazes me too about interviewing your particular generation is the fact that none of your generation ever really traveled too far away from
Right.
home or home or the farm, and yet you're crisscrossing the country, and some people went halfway around the world. It just
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
No, it's been a good life for me, and I've enjoyed it, and I've gotten to go to different places. The place I really, really, really enjoyed was seeing the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Going to Arlington Cemetery there, and Jennifer and her husband then took me back there for a convention, and we made a tour of the city. But then we went on that flight that she went on. You know, were you on that?
I don't know if I was on your flight, but
Really?
yeah.
Oh, that was fantastic,
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful that whoever thought of that idea was, and I understand the last flight is gone out of here in this area, so I guess there's not a whole lot of those World War II people left over, so that's who it was mainly for to begin with,
Right.
as I understand it.
That's
but,
correct. Correct.
But it was certainly an honorable thing. Oh man! Let me tell you a little bit about this.
We're gonna get to that. Let's finish the interview, then we're gonna
okay.
concentrate entirely on this.
Okay.
We've talked about almost everything. Talk a little bit about family, and we'll wind down the interview part of it.
Okay. I had two older brothers. Like I say, they built a new high school when I was in second grade. I had two brothers that both graduated from high school in San Antonio because I guess they weren't accredited out there in my little town of Vernia. So they drove into San Antonio every morning, went to school, came home, and in fact, I had two older brothers. The younger of the two, at his graduation, the superintendent made mention of the fact that we've got one gentleman here that traveled from Livonia, Texas, every day. He's never been tardy, never been missed a day, and he's graduating here, and it was just kind of unusual and I think it was because Livonia wasn't accredited. I know my dad was president of the school board every year that I was in school. He was a believer in education.
Wow.
And then I actually, when he retired, I guess, my oldest brother took over and became also interested in education, and we got they believed in education, and although my oldest brothers didn't go to college, they were needed because my dad had opened a store, and it was a family operation, and we had a competitor. There were, in that little town of Livonia, my dad opened a third store, and when one of the competitors told someone, "I'll give him 6 months and he'll go under." He didn't realize that my dad had my two brothers older. I was too young to be of any value in the store, And even my mother would go down to the store on Wednesday afternoons just to socialize, more or less. She didn't, not interested in selling any stuff, but you got to believe, you know, like I said, there were very few cars at that time, and farmers brought their wives in, and it was a social time for them.
Very, very smart on his part.
Yep, and she came down on Wednesday afternoons and Saturday afternoons, and just socialized, you know, and it was a part of being a good place to do business,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Yep, and well,
yeah.
It made me so proud when I could do something. Most of the farmers had a kerosene stove that they used, and they'd bring in this little 1 gallon, 2 gallon, or 5 gallon cans, and it made me feel so important when I got to pump that big thing full of kerosene and put a potato on the end of the spout, you know. Oh, I felt that was so, like I was really doing a big job, you know. And, you know, it was fun. It was great. And people used to bring in their chickens, you know, and we'd buy chickens, buy a cup, bring a load of chickens in, and brought eggs in, and they sold them, and then we'd, in turn, sell them, you know.
Yeah.
They'd buy with what they sold.
Yeah.
So that was a country store in the days of a real country store.
Wow. Wow.
And my dad had, because I guess mainly there wasn't a whole lot of people had cars. My dad was sort of had that side of the store, which was the dry goods side. He sold men's shoes, ladies' shoes. He sold. We bought. People made their dresses. You know, farmers' wives made their girls' dresses, and we'd get these bolts. They call them bolts of clothing. I don't know, that wide or something like that, and 2 or 3 yards and make a dress. And at one time the flour mills put out their flour in cloth that could be made into dresses.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So that was a big deal. That was good. But it was different world.
Yeah. Right.
And people were happy.
Yeah.
And there wasn't this name calling and all that, and somehow people lived their lives. They were happy, they were pleased, content with what they had, and I see the country now. This country is in bad shape as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they announced this guy for the Supreme Court. Immediately the other side said, we don't like him.
Yeah.
Well, and see what he's done in the 20 years that he's been a judge, you know. Make a decision on that rather than just automatically. It's sad that it's reached that stage, but you know, I don't want to get into politics. But,
Yeah. Well, then talk a little bit about Barbara and the kids.
Oh, Barbara was a wonderful, wonderful lady. She had one son when I married her, Jimmy. Jimmy's father had been a pilot for the Royal Air Force in Canada, Royal Canadian Air Force, and he had served some time over in England. Came back, and they put him in the Navy, and he was ferrying a plane from Long Beach to Alameda, which was a big naval station, probably still is, I don't know. But anyway, something happened, and malfunction of some kind. I don't know if he failed to jump or parachute, I don't know, but he got killed. So Jimmy was without a father. He didn't have a father, and until Barbara married me. And then Jennifer was born in Alameda. And then, I had a son also that had been born in 1947. Jimmy was born in, I don't remember what year he was born in, but anyway, he was the first. Then came John, born in 47. And then Jennifer was born in Vegas in 52. We had moved from the Bay Area, Alameda, to Las Vegas in 1952. And like I think I told you, she stepped off the plane, she could breathe.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Oh, man. They went my job in San Francisco, but that's okay. I enjoyed being in Vegas. It was fun. Didn't make as much money as I did in San Francisco, and took a different, lived a different lifestyle, but it was good. Can't complain.
How long were you and Barbara married before she passed?
Let's see. Jennifer, do you remember what year Barbara died?
She died in 2001.
2001.
But they were divorced in probably 50s.
Yeah, I had divorced her.
Oh, okay.
We had divorced. And
Okay.
That's why I'm not that familiar with her.
Okay, sorry.
When she died. But then I subsequently divorced the second wife also. So
Yeah, okay.
I've been single since the 50s sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Freelancing. But I didn't, the way my life lived, the way I lived my life, once I started working at Caesars, working graveyard, going home, changing clothes, going out playing 18 holes of golf, coming home, getting something to eat, going to bed, starting a routine. I didn't have much room for social life,
Yeah.
And but I enjoyed what I was doing. I thoroughly enjoyed playing golf.
Are you still able to get out and hit?
No, not anymore. No,
Yeah.
I wish I could, but I can't. And I don't know. A few years ago, I just couldn't play anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I just got too old.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, I enjoyed the days that I had, so I made the most of it. That's for sure. Yeah, had a good life, no problem.
Good.
I'm can't complain about anything.
Very good.
I've had a good life. Met a lot of wonderful people. Had beautiful children, and grateful children. And I'm so grateful to the children I have. They're so good to me. And,
Okay.
I'm so grateful is a word. I can't think of a better word really, but they are so good and kind to me that I hope I deserve it.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, Don, as we start to wind down this interview,
okay.
and Jennifer, please feel to jump in too. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about, or any of the stories that have kind of floated to the top as we've been sitting here that you wanted to talk about, so that ideally we've rounded out your story, or do you think by and large we captured everything you wanted to?
Pretty much. Jennifer brought this section out.
Yeah, we're going to get to that after we close down the actual interview.
Okay,
Yeah, for sure.
okay.
I definitely want to attack this,
But I think have you been listening in a little bit every now and
Yes.
then?
Is there any stories that he left out, or anything you want to know that?
No, I think he's pretty much hit all of the high spots of, the bad hepatitis shot and, some of that history there. And yeah, just the fact that he was able to serve.
Yeah.
Didn't get to serve in the way that he had anticipated.
But,
My brother's here, I'm here.
Yeah, right.
Our kids are here. That could have been a whole different picture. So
I'm so fortunate. I'm so fortunate, and when I was separated from the service, I was apparently full of this hepatitis or yellow fever serum or whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but anyway, I got 35% disability for a number of years. I don't remember how many years.
Do you still have any effects from it today, or is that pretty
Not
much
that I know of, but I've watched my diet. I've watched my diet ever since he sent me up to Fort George Wright and put me on a non-fat diet, So
Wow.
I still drink coffee without cream. I don't use cream, a little bit every now and then with cereal. but mostly I stay away from butter, fatty stuff, you know. You know, it's interesting, my dad, you know, back in Depression days, we had meat one day a week.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad on Saturday nights, we stayed open till 10, 11 o'clock, whatever, you know, whatever it took. Whenever the last guy was through buying, that's when we closed. Anyway, on Saturday nights, I remember my dad would always give my son, my brother Gene, $1 or whatever it was, and said, "Go over and tell that butcher you want a nice roast with a lot of fat on it." and he loved fat, man. And maybe I got like loving fat then too. But anyway, somehow I still think I got this bad. A lot of these guys that got the yellow fever shot were in North Africa, and they didn't have the medical facilities that they had here. And I mean, I've heard this. I really can't substantiate it, but this is what traveled through the grapevine, that similar guys that were in North Africa didn't have the medical facilities over there that we had here, that I had, that I could spend 3 visits in the hospital. I don't remember how long I stayed each time, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever. But the poor guys that were in North Africa and got some of this serum, they just died. And I was fortunate enough to be in this country yet and could get medical attention here.
Wow.
But,
Well, you know, for someone that didn't serve overseas, you sure dodged a lot of bullets here.
well,
you know?
in a sense.
Between the plane crash and the parachuting and the other crash and your yellow fever, I mean, you dodged some serious bullets, really.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, well, I've been lucky. I've been lucky.
Dad, tell Brad about the fact that we're German heritage. Your mom spoke German.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember who you said came and said something about you make sure you hang the American flag.
Right.
During the war. Yeah, during the war, my grandmother, I don't know, as a little boy, I used to, on Friday afternoons, I'd go down to my grandmother's and get her order for the week. Maybe a little coffee, a little sugar, a little flour, I don't know, baking powder, not much else. But she was 71 years old, and I thought, my God, she's ancient. You know, she is ancient. But I so enjoyed going down there and getting that order from her every Friday, and I'd take it back. And she always had a cup of black coffee waiting for me when I got back, and a cookie. That was my reward. She made sure that I had that cup of black coffee and a cookie, and I just loved it. And okay, now on the during the war, they came around and told her, "You fly the American." Now she was born in Germany. All my grandparents were born in Germany, and they came around and told her, "You fly the American flag every day," and she did. I mean, you know, it was circumstance. I mean, she didn't have any grudge against Americans or anybody else. It was just that she happened to be born in Germany and came over here, but they came around and told her, "You fly that flag every day," and she did. Yeah.
Wow.
But you know, that's, I don't know what that would be considered now, but it'd be terrible.
Yeah. Right.
Dad, could you tell Brad about the poll tax and voting down there and what
No,
it was like during political?
No, in Texas at that time, they used to have a poll tax, and it was 50 cents a year, and you had to pay that if you wanted to vote. Well, on voting day, the banker, who was a big Democrat, would gather up all these blacks and Mexicans and pay their 50 cents to whoever it was, and then take them down to vote, you know. And I can remember, not that this has anything to do with it, but what kind of soured me on and my oldest brother on politics is this occasion. the first time that Lyndon Johnson ever ran for an office, he ran against a guy by the name of Dick Clayburgh. The Clayburgh family owned all of that South Texas that was the King Ranch. My brother was on the board that counted the votes at the end of the day. So happened, tie. So they had to have a recount. And guess who won? Lyndon Johnson's side won. But anyway, that's a side story. But
Wow.
kind of
Texas
funny.
politics.
But my brother said after, he said, I'll never become a Democrat. I'll never vote Democrat again. My dad was Democrat. I'm pretty sure he was Democrat at the time, although I don't remember them ever overhear them talking politics. Of course, they used to talk in German, which I picked up a few words, but you know, anytime they wanted to keep something confidential, they talked in German. I can remember my dad working for this guy, this store before he opened his own store, and he'd come home and he wouldn't shave in the morning. He'd shave when he came home for lunch. And I remember standing by the dresser there and watching him shave. Oh, I was so fascinated there.
Wow.
And then we had this big old house. Well, Jennifer's seen it. It's not that big, is it, Jennifer?
Not terribly.
No. But anyway, in the morning, my mother would be the first one up. She'd go in the kitchen, start a fire, then she'd go out and milk the cow. By the time she got back milking the cow, the fire was pretty warm, and we'd get up and we were all dressed in the kitchen, and we'd sit down to nice warm milk with cereal, you know. That was pretty nice. Fresh milk. Warm, fresh milk. And then, but then late in the afternoon, about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, she would start a fire in the stove that was in the living room. And by the time that my dad got home at 5 or 6, whatever it was, I don't know, that room was pretty well heated up, you know. I can remember studying by a oil lamp, you know.
Wow.
Oil lamp at each end of the table, and my two brothers would be around this table about the size of half of that counter there, you know. There's a lamp at each end.
Yeah.
My dad sitting at this end, smoking a pipe or a cigar, and his feet on the front thing of that stove, and that nice warm stove, and us studying there. And, then we finally got electric lights, and I remember we got one little light, I guess about a 60-watt bulb, in the middle of this big room, about as big as Jennifer's living room, but one little light out of the ceiling, and that was it. But we had electricity, you know. That was nice. That was nice. And we were some of the first people that had electricity, you know. But it was a great day.
Yeah, it sounded cozy.
Yeah, it was. It was, and we had I slept in a bedroom right next to the living room, of course, and then we'd open the door in the late evening or when we went to bed, and the heat would kind of go in the bedroom, and then my dad and mom slept out in this sleeping porch over here, but they opened it. Didn't do much heating out there, but I guess some heat. But they had this big old feather bed, you know, made. Man, they were warm. They wrapped around you. You got under that thing, it wrapped around you. And that's what I like about Jennifer's thing that she has here, man. I sleep so well. It wraps right around you, man. There's no air between you and your body and the comforter. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we had this country store, and my middle brother, every morning, the first thing, there was a store across the street that my dad used to work before he opened his own store. But there was sort of a community well back there. And every morning my brother would go and get a fresh bucket of water and leave it by the back door of the store. And when the farmers came in, there was a, what do you call it, cup?
Yeah, tin cup
Yeah.
or a ladle.
A tin cup, yeah. It was there, and the first thing did was take a nice drink of that water. Everybody drank out of the same cup. It didn't matter, you know.
Wow.
And there was no in cotton season. It was no not unusual to see 4 or 5 wagons out there. You know, they'd been to the gin. They'd had their cotton, you know, baled, had their money, and then of course my dad got his paid for the year, but he wouldn't charge interest. That was the beauty part of it.
Wow.
That's what I didn't understand. That he didn't charge interest. He said, "You just pay me whatever, you know, whatever it is," and that was enough. He was happy to just have the business, you know. Yeah.
Anything else you can think of?
Gosh, I'm sure there will be at
Yeah.
some
Oh,
point.
there always is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was, oddly enough, Brad, there's one highway that was the only street in town that paved. Now, it started down on the coast of Texas. It goes through Vernia, where I was born, San Antonio, Kerrville, San Angelo, Denver. It goes all the way up to Canada. Highway 87.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that unusual?
Pretty.
Really
Pretty cool.
unusual. A little bitty old town on a highway as well known as that, you know, and I-25 is part of it, you know.
Okay.
Yep.
I think one of the stories that was interesting, nothing to do with being a veteran, when you stepped on that rake.
Oh yeah. Yeah, okay. When school was out, of course we didn't have any store-bought toys of any kind. We made our own guns. We made rubber guns. I mean, we get a tube and, you know, cut things like this and make a thing like a piece of wood this long, put a fire. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, and then there's a clothespin here on the end. And we made our own toys. But anyway, one of the things that we did was there's 2 kids that I knew that were friends, neighbors. They lived a couple of doors up from me, and in the summertime I'd go up there after school, and it was high jumping was a popular thing to do, you know. And we'd go up there, and I was a pretty good high jumper. In high school I jumped 6 feet. At that time it was pretty good.
Wow.
And Jennifer, I have a picture of one of
I
the.
know, that's a great picture.
Yeah, it was snapped beautifully. There was a meet in San Antonio that we went to, and I remember getting a 2nd place medal at that meet. And but anyway, I went up there, and this one afternoon I made the jump, and someone had left the rake with the tines up, and I stepped on the rake. And it didn't go all the way through, but it would have been better if it had. So anyway, this is late afternoon. It starts swelling up. And we did have a doctor in town, and I guess he gave me a tetanus shot. But anyway, it kept getting worse and worse, and by Sunday, my bottom of my leg was getting green. You know, gangrene was setting in. So the doctor that we had in town was up there, and he says, "Have Gene go down and call Dr. Skull in San Antonio. Tell him he needs to come out. We need to have him do some surgery." So the doctor, it was such lucky. That's why I say my life has been so lucky. The doctor from San Antonio that Gene was going to call happened to be going out. He had built a cabin out there in the country, and he was going to visit the cabin. Gene flagged him down. He came in and looked at his, and he had his bag, surgeon's bag, I guess they carry with them all the time. Anyway, he came in, looked at me, and I was laying in bed, and my mama's name was Erica. He said, Erica, get me all the hot water you can, boiling water you can. She started up the fire in the kitchen, got some boiling water. And anyway, he performed surgery on my right foot, and I ended up with 3 tubes going through the foot. None of the things had gone through, which would have been better if they had, but they went maybe halfway. And so all that, you know, it didn't have a way to, all that, on a fork, I mean,
Dirty rake.
a rake that had been laying out there, you know. Who knows what was on it?
Yeah.
And we'd used it to rake the jumping pit. And, but anyway, he performed this thing, and I had 3 rubber tubes, and they had little slits in them, little cutouts, so that it could drain any blood in the foot. And oh, what a stroke of luck for him for my brother to flag him down at that time. And I don't know how long it took, but it took a pretty good while. And in those days, I don't know what, I mean, tetanus, I don't think it's been invented. I don't know. But
Probably not, yeah.
I don't know what it was, but somehow they used something called poultice. I don't know what it was. It was like a grain, and they boiled it and put it in a bag or sack and put it around there, and it was supposed to draw the poison out of the foot or whatever infected area. I don't know what that I don't know what that poultice was, and it would be interesting to find out. Yeah, it would be. But anyway, it took me a while to get over that, and but thank God the doctor was there, because, like I said, that what that green stuff was starting to climb up my leg, and I could have lost a leg real quick.
Oh,
I think,
boy.
you know.
Wow.
Well, your ear. You had a surgery with your ear too.
Well, but Jennifer, I don't remember anything about that, because I was maybe 2 years old. I had a mastoid operation on this ear. There's a hole back here and back of this ear. They scraped the big, I don't know what they did back there, but there's a a lot of that earphone is missing. But that was when I don't remember anything about that, Jennifer. And I don't know, I guess I was crying all the time, and they finally took me to town, and they determined that I had this ear trouble, and well, again, stroke of luck.
Yeah.
I've been lucky. I've been lucky, and she's one of the main ones.
I'm definitely the lucky one on that one.
Yeah.
How about when you would be on leave and visit mom? You'd go dancing, and that was a big thing to go out to.
Oh, sure, dancing.
Afternoon tea and dancing.
Oh, dancing was big, and after during the war and in the war. Yeah, when like I said, I met her when she came out with this group of girls, and like I say, they went, maybe this weekend they'd go to the Air Corps base, next week they'd go to the Marine base down next San Diego, next week at the Navy base somewhere. They were just dancing with the soldiers. Well,
Now, how did you, out of that group of girls, how did she stick out in your mind? How did you?
beautiful.
Yeah.
She was a beautiful girl. We just, and I remember we went out, she and I and this friend of mine from Texas by the name of Wonneberger and his girlfriend, we went out somewhere, and I know we got back late, and that bus driver was some kind of hot. And because, you know, they were supposed to get the girls back all in L.A., and we stayed out longer than we should have. And, but anyway, we ended up getting married, and it was, but I used to go, and when I was courting her, when I was out at Muroc, and she lived in L.A. at the 166 South McCadden. I'll never forget.
How do you do that?
Yeah, and I'd go into town, and in those days, Brad, there was such a thing as afternoon tea dancing. And we'd go out and I'd pick her up, and we'd go down to downtown LA to the Biltmore and have lunch, tea dance, little dancing in the afternoon. And then, I don't know, we'd go see a show or something. Then at night, we went to the Coconut Grove, which isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
It was in the Ambassador Hotel, right on Wilshire Boulevard. And beautiful place, Freddie Martin's orchestra, and we'd dance and have a nice dinner there and have dance. And then another place we'd go was Ciro's, Ciros, which was on Sunset Boulevard. And that was Desi Arnaz and his orchestra played there. And another place we went to eat was called The Players. Good food. I don't remember if we did dancing. I'm sure they must have had dancing there too. But that was it, and you did that. After a while, it was fun. It was great, and it was, I never did have a car, and that's what I don't get, is how I managed to know people all the way along that had cars. Like when I lived out there in Lancaster, and I'd have to go into Muroc. Well, this guy, Fisher was his name, and he had a Ford convertible, and I know when we were up in Pocatello, Idaho at one time, Barbara and I sat in the rumble seat, and he and his, I don't know if they were married, I guess they were married, and then we went to a place up in Idaho. The service took it over. It was apparently a country club. It's Payette Lakes, yeah. And I remember going up there and looking at this forest, and suddenly there's this trail through all these trees. I said, "What the heck is that? I'd never seen a ski trail." And then it finally dawned on me there was a ski run, I'd never seen a ski run being brought up in South Texas. Yeah. But man, that was a nice place up there, and they apparently the military had taken it over, and they had a speedboat there, a nice boat there, and you could fish. And I remember steaks were 25 cents, and somewhere else, I don't know if I still have it, but I had a picture of this chef at that time, and we had nice steaks there, 25 cents, It was nice. Beautiful place. Payette Lakes. I don't know if it's still there or not, but boy, if it is, I'm sure it's nice, and I'm pretty sure it's there too. If you ever get up in that area, check it out, because it's nice.
Yeah, do you remember anything about the housing when you guys, John had already been born, you were in Idaho? You were in officers' quarters. Do you remember anything about the housing?
Well, I lived in officers' quarters on the base, and ate at the officers' club. Then after we were married, we were able to find a little place in Lancaster, California. And like I say, I don't know how I lucked out to meet this guy that had the car, but we made it into work every day on time. And he was a nice guy. Often wondered what happened to him too, but he was a pilot, and a lot of those guys didn't make it.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Well, anyway.
Well, Don, the last question I always like to ask in these interviews, as you look back on your time in the service during World War II, Did it play a role in your life, change your life, affect your life at all, or do you just look at it as a chapter in your life that you went through? How would you answer that?
Well, before the war, I had no intention of military thing.
Yeah.
But the war came along when I was in school,
Right.
and I wanted to be a pilot, and unfortunately I didn't make it as a pilot, but I enjoyed my time. Brad, the service was good to me. I mean, whenever, instead of staying in barracks or something like that, at my time, I'd be down on the flight line. And I you know, back in those days, I'd always spend my time down there in the squadron briefing room, and I remember different occasions on this one particular occasion. In those days, every time you changed an engine, you had to take the airplane up and check the airspeed meter and the compass, because as it banged on the airplane, it would change something in both of them. So this one day I'm down in the thing, and this real good pilot, he says, "Come on, Vorpahl, we want to go for a flight." Okay, where are we going? Well, we got to do this. Okay, so he, as pilot, a good pilot, and I took off in that plane. Now we should have been court-martialed right then and there. I'm sitting in the co-pilots. Now we go down, do our thing, you know, check the compass, check the airspeed meters, you know. He said, "Well, let's go to have a little fun." I'm sitting, I love to fly. I said, "Let's go." He had, apparently, I don't know if I guess it was his wife. They lived somewhere in Long Beach. Anyway, we've got 3 new engines. We fly into LA, drops down to about 500, puts it in low pitch. It makes all the noise, you know. It's when the propellers change pitch, so they're grabbing more air. 500 feet with 3 new engines. He flies around over. I don't know if he had called her and told her, "Well, I'll be over in a little while," or did it on our own. Anyway, we do that. We fly back to the base. Should have been waiting with the military police with handcuffs, you know. Him taking off, and what happens to him in case he has a heart attack? Yeah. I'm sitting in the pilot, he did know how I loved to fly, and I was, even any flight that I was on, I was up on that flight deck. We're looking at the dials, you know, and the throttles were here in the middle, 4 throttles, one for each engine, and a big wheel with the left wheel. But then he knew I loved to fly, and so he said, "Come on." But for him to take off and to risk his career and my career, it's mind-boggling now, but we did it. We got away with it. And man alive, if the commanding officer had ever found out that he took that expensive airplane up with non-flyer, non-pilot, man alive, we'd have been hanging from the nearest doorstep now. But we got away with it. But you know, Brad, so often I hear stories nowadays of accidents with, they say, pilot error. You know what? Some of those stories are true, because these pilots take unusual chances. Mm-hmm. Another time I was at the base and hanging around the squadron room, and this guy was a co-pilot, and there was a Navy, it was called SBD, Douglas SBD, SBD, Sky Bomber Douglas. And it was a single engine plane, but it carried 1 torpedo, big torpedo, probably as big from here to that wall. And this plane comes on base, lands on base. I don't know how he got permission to fly it. He says, "You want to go for a flight?" Naturally, I want to go for a flight. I climb in the back seat. We go up to the Indian Current up in that desert group 20 mule team country, and he takes that thing right down on the deck. There's a bunch of cows down there, right there. Chases those cows all over the place, scares the life out of them. But what I'm getting at is anytime you hear about these things and they say pilot error, say maybe it's so, because even harkening back to the days when I first went down to Tucson, Davis Mountain, got out of navigation school, and I had this new pilot, a little guy, and he didn't want to be a bomber pilot. He wanted to be a fighter pilot. But anyway, so we could get our 4 hours of flying time. If you've got 4 hours of flying time, you got half your, as a commissioned officer, you got $150 a month for being a second lieutenant. But if you got in 4 hours of flying a month, then you got an extra $75 a month.
Wow.
So 2 1/4, that's pretty doggone good. So anyway, this little guy, Paul Pavel, says, let's go. So with the full crew, we fly down, I think into Mexico, I'm not sure. Didn't matter, I'm sitting up in the front seat. This guy, like I say, he wanted to be a fighter pilot. He had that instinct in him, Here he is in this big 4-engine bomber, big lumbering, big 4-inch bomber, 4-engine bomber. Takes that thing down on the highway, and a guy's coming up the highway, and we're so low that there's a windmill over here on the right-hand side of the road. He has to lift up to get over it. I mean, this was a daredevil fight. This was his one chance, He loved it. And the poor guy coming down this road jumped out of the car and jumped into the ditch. Of course, it was funny for us, Not funny for that guy.
Probably not.
But so anytime you hear a thing about maybe it is pilot error, maybe there is some pilot error, because there is a certain amount of attractiveness, or whatever you're going to call it, in being a pilot, and then being a hot pilot, being a pursuit pilot, and gets to do the jumps, dives, and stuff like that. But well, interesting times. I've gotten away with a lot in the service. Ah well.
Yeah.
But he should have been court-martialed if ever anybody found out about it. But this thing I'm telling you over Long Beach, if they'd gotten the number of that plane and somebody had called it in, oh man, the military police would have been waiting for us with handcuffs when we landed.
Yeah, sure.
And the interesting thing about him, when we got back, he said, "You want to land it?" I said, "Well, of course." I'm sitting in the co-pilot seat. He said, "Well, here you are. Take it over." So he was in he did have control of the throttle, but he knew, what the landing speed was, and he said I landed it. I don't know if I did or not, but he said I did. So I'll go with that. But he had faith in me.
Well, Don, I want to thank you for sitting down today to tell a very wonderful story, but just as important, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
My pleasure, man. I tell you what, Red, I have to say, my time in the military was fun.
Yeah.
So many people resent it and just hated it. I loved it.
Yeah, good.
I don't know what there was about it, but maybe what is it? The
adrenaline, or
the
excitement,
camaraderie,
military part of it, the demanding of you being here at a certain time and that at a certain time.
The discipline.
Punctual. That's it. That's a word. That's it. Maybe that's what it is. But anyway, so many of the people get out they can't get out fast enough.
Yeah.
It was, like I say, at the end when it was, I saw what was happening though, so I said, well, the guys from the West Point are going to be in charge of the bases, and they're going to be pretty much in charge. And there's a lot of people graduate from the military academies, naval academies. That these guys are all going to be in top positions, and so with that in mind, I said, maybe I better get out, and I don't know if it was the right thing to do or not, but anyway, my time in the service was always fun. It was, I just enjoyed it.
Good.
I just enjoyed it, and like I said, I told you when we were in a theater, and on that Sunday afternoon when the war ended, we came out and the news was people out in the streets dancing and jumping around, and the war's over, war's. I'm probably the only one that was dissatisfied. It wasn't. I said, you mean I'm not going to get to serve?
No, but you did though.
And well, that was fate, though, you know.
Yeah.
But I must say I enjoyed every minute in the service. It was good to me, and now I enjoyed it. That's all I can say. Maybe I should have stayed in. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I saw like I say, saw what was happening, and said, you're going to be stuck, and you might be taking orders for a long time, and so maybe it's best for me to get out, which I did, and I went to school, and fortunate to do that, and fortunate to go to good school too at the time, before the crazies took over, that's where the 60s movement, all that started in Berkeley, and I'm not proud of that, but it happened. And
Right.
We toured the school and I wasn't going to be going to school.
Well, once again, thank you very much, Don.
You're sure welcome. That was my fun.
So, Don, talk a little bit about what you've got here on the table.
Well, this is the A10 section that I used. It was used in what we call shooting the stars. We looked through this and moved this little unit here and moved it back and forth. You got about 10 different readings, and then you read it, what degree of what do you call it? In the world, or whatever you want to call it. And then you do this with three different things: star, sun, moon, any of those, river, coastline, anything like that. You try to get three different things. They won't all be at the one, but you take the one that's in the middle and assume that it's right. Now, this is a little lead on the back of this, and as we look through this like this, we move this off it and move it back and forth, and so you get about 10 readings, and then you take the one that's in the middle and assume that that's right. You figure that the star up there is at 28 degrees, or another star over here at 45 degrees, the sun over there, another degree, you mix them all together, there you are.
What would you do on a cloudy day when you didn't have those points to play off of? How would you navigate?
When
on a cloudy evening or something, when you didn't have points to pull off of, how would you know?
You prayed a lot.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's when you needed you wanted to have a good compass.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have reliable airspeed meter, and that's what you had to rely on. But then this was your backup too. You got if you got 3 lines of position, you call that a fix, F-I-X.
Okay.
And that's where you allegedly were. And if you're out here in the ocean, and you come.
For your age, you've got an incredible memory. Do you think you could take that out on a clear night and still work it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
no problem. No
Wow.
problem. I know some stars, but not the 50 constellations that I knew during the service. I mean, if I reviewed it a little bit, I'm sure it would come back.
Wow.
But like the Big Dipper, Dubimarak, Fectamigras, Aliothmes, or Alcade, Arctor, Speaker. That takes care of the Big Dipper and all those, you know. So that takes care of that part of the horizon. Now you take another star over here. I don't know. Can't think of the names of them right now. But
Yeah.
then you do that, and maybe the moon up here, or something else over here. Look, three lines come together like that. Hopefully they close together, and that's where you are.
I'll be darned. Wow. Wow. So you were able to keep this after you got out of the service then?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was supposed to, but I
Oh.
did. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. And you have a battery here for at night, you know.
Uh-huh.
I carry extra leads, little leads, points for the use here, you know, on this. I've forgotten the name of it. I don't know.
That's okay.
Okay. But anyway, then you always carried extra leads. You always carried an extra one of these. Then that was it.
Very good.
That was it. You relied on it, and if you knew your business, you were there.
Fascinating.
Very nice. Very nice.